What's going on, everybody? Matt here again from East Coast Sabers. Today we're going to do a little bit of a tutorial. People have asked me my method for putting on wonawonga.com accurate T-track grips. Now these are a hard plastic, they're not rubber. They do have to be pre-cut and notched when you get them. They come about just like this. They're just a straight track about 4 inches. They do have to be cut to the length that you want. The length will vary depending on the length of your lower. A lot of vintages excuse me, they vary just ever so slightly, so you don't want to cut them all not knowing what your actual length is. So the best thing to do is just to take it, as you can see, there is some play when you insert it in the clamp, and that's because of the way that the notches are cut and the way that they engage the tabs in the clamp. If we can get this to go back in, here we go. When you lock it, the tab on the clamp just has a little bit of play in the slot in the lower half. So if you were to pull it all the way out and then measure your grip, put it all the way to the bottom and measure, and then make it flush with the bottom of the clamp, you're not going to be able to get it off because it needs to be able to push in that little bit in order to twist it all the way off, because of that little tab right there. It needs to be able to clear that. So as you can see, if we put this on and then we pull it all the way out, as you can see, pushed in, you can see the gap, pull out, disappear. It doesn't turn all the way, so you can't pull it off. You need to push it in and then you can finish turning and pull it off. So that's just a little tip, is when you go to measure, make sure that you pull it all the way out and then take your measurement. And then if you want a static prop, that's where you can take your measurement from, with it all the way out, and you can have it butt right up against that. If you don't want to ever have to remove the lower half, that's one way to do it. But most people, even if you don't plan on taking it off, it's safe to push it in all the way and then take your measurement from the very bottom up to the bottom edge of the clamp. And we're going to do that real quick with a just a simple dial caliper, or I should say, excuse me, my digital caliper. I just have a set of digital veneer calipers, and I have it set to metric. So you just want to zero it, make sure it's zeroed, and then we're just going to, like I said, take it off. And then we're going to, that's all the way out, we're going to push it in as far as it'll go, and set that off to the side. We're going to pull this out, and then you're just going to take it and go from the bottom of the clamp until you are flush with the bottom. So bottom edge of the clamp, hold it straight. You want to get it as straight as possible, and just slide it down until it makes contact. And we have minus 13.9. Well, that's obviously not right, so my caliper's screwed up. So I'm going to re-zero it. There we go. Sometimes that'll happen with the digital ones. So bottom of the clamp, and then right to the bottom, we have 93.18 millimeters. So if it's 93.8, and always measure twice, cut once, because you can always take away more material, you can't add more material. So we're just going to double check that, close the clamp just to be safe. And it's easier to do this without the camera in the way. 92.8 this time. So we're gonna say that's good. I usually measure it a few more times, but I've already measured this one So 92.8. So I would cut these ones to 92. That way you're still not butted right up against it. You still have a little bit of room because you, like I said, you do still need to be able to pull it all the way out. So that being the case, I've already cut these. As you can see, they come 4 inches, either 4 or I believe 6. But the longer ones are only for the Darth Vader, I believe, from Empire Strikes Back. So you want the standard 4-inch sections from Wanawanga, and as you can see, they're far too long. I've already cut these ones. I've cut, notched, and drilled a pilot hole for the screw. And as you can see, if we line this up with the bottom, just press it hard right on there. Make sure it's nice and flush. As you can see, we're just below the clamp, which will allow this to spin freely. So if we pull the clamp out, as you can see now, there's a little more of a gap, but that'll be pretty decent right there, and it'll still allow it to turn without a problem. Better to be just a little on the short side to ensure that it comes off all the way. So now that we have the measurement taken, you're going to want to go ahead and cut and notch or angle your grips if you're doing A New Hope. Put the 30-degree cuts on the edges. Now we can go ahead and apply these. Excuse me. So what you're going to need to apply these is, what I use is some 2-part clear epoxy. This is, I wrote clear on it because the wrapping came off. I use the Loctite. This can be bought at any hardware store. I think I got this at Home Depot. It's the 2-part and it dries clear. I believe it's got a 15-minute set time. Leave it 24 hours to fully cure, but it's pretty dry within a couple hours, so not really a whole lot to worry about. So you're going to need some of that. You're going to want some rubbing alcohol, 50%, 70%, 90%. Doesn't really matter. I just have some toothpicks. You're probably going to want a latex or a non-latex glove just for fingerprints and oils and stuff like that. I've got a couple of them here. You're going to want a rag. Now this is just a soft kind of lint-free shop rag. Works well for cleaning. And you want a piece of cardboard to put the epoxy on. You don't want to put it on your surface or anything because then it'll harden down on that. So this is just for the epoxy itself. And I also have my 3D printed grip guide. That is, I 3D printed off Shapeways. It is from, I think, Saber Parts is the name of the store on Shapeways, and it ensures that your grips go on 100% straight every time. And there are different versions available. This one is set up for Empire Strikes Back / The Force Awakens. It is set to the required length. I have these ones cut just a hair short because I measured these for this particular lower going into that clamp, so they're not perfect. They have a little bit of slack, but it's not a big deal. You just want to make sure they're all the way at the bottom, because that way they're pressed they're flush with the edge of the bottom edge of the end cap. But this ensures that all 6 grips are perfectly spaced out. They're perfectly straight, and it's really a very, very helpful tool. And he does have them for the 6 grips for Empire Strikes Back and The Force Awakens. I just wrote it on the bottom because I have a couple of them. I have one for A New Hope that has the 7 grips around the edges, and he has them for different types of grips. This one is for the Wanawanga grip, so it slides in nicely. He has some for the 2.0 grips that are a little bit wider, and I think he even has some for different lengths and things like that too. So this is definitely something that I'd recommend getting. It wasn't too expensive off Shapeways. You can just get it in the normal, strong, flexible plastic, and it works absolutely amazing. So that being said, those are all the things that you're really going to need to do this properly. So let's get started. Okay, I've got my gloves on here. This is just to protect the metals and the plastic and stuff from getting oil from my hands. onto them. You want the surfaces as clean as possible to make sure that the epoxy really has something to grip onto, and oils and stuff like that will work against you. So the first thing we're going to do, and I forgot to mention this, is you're actually going to want some sandpaper. This is some really rough grit sandpaper, and what we're going to do is we're just going to scuff up the bottoms of our grips to really give them a rough surface and really give that epoxy something to bite into. So you don't need to really worry about getting it in the channels as much, but just give it a quick rundown on the underside of the grip, being careful not to scratch the surface of it, because it will leave a slight discoloration. So I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, not bad. So you can see how it's pretty scuffed up on the edges, and that's primarily where most of the epoxy is going to go. Some of it will fill in this channel. That's the point of the channel being there, is to allow some of it. So if you want to, you can just take the sandpaper and just run it down in the center as well. Something like that. So you don't need to make it look pretty or anything like that. It's just a quick thing. So I'm going to go ahead and sand up the rest of these, and we'll be right back as soon as we're ready for the next step. Alright, so I've got all my grips nice and sanded on the bottoms. So the next thing we're going to want to do is just clean up any of the residue left on the bottoms of them, any of the dust or anything. So I'm just going to take a little bit of rubbing alcohol and just put a little bit on a rag. I'm just going to gently wipe down the underside of each grip. Make sure I get any dust. You can also use a paper towel. I just had these shop rags handy. And then we're just going to let each one just kind of air dry for a second. I'm left-handed, so it's easier to do this way. Alright, so now we're just going to want to let those just kind of dry for a second. They're already pretty dry. Rubbing alcohol just evaporates pretty much immediately, so. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to want to take our lower half, and we're going to want to give this a good wipe down with some rubbing alcohol as well, because this is going to have fingerprints on it, and it's going to have just oil residue possibly from the manufacturing process, and who knows. So good to give it just a solid wipe down all the way around. Okay, so now we've got our lower half wiped down. I'm just going to take a section of the dry cloth here, or a dry section of the cloth I should say, and just make sure I get all the dust and everything off of it. And with the gloves on, now I can touch it without having to worry about getting oil and fingerprints and things like that. So, excuse me, the next step is you're going to want to install it in the clamp and turn it. And if you were going for Empire Strikes Back, then obviously, you know, the clamp would go this way. If it's A New Hope, the clamp would go that way. So you really have to determine how you want the Graflex logo to be because you do have two options. You can install it this way, or you can spin it 180 degrees, and now it's that way. So this being Empire Strikes Back, I think I'm going to have it this way so that the cobalt is in line with the clamp right here, and you kind of got the Fulmer, but I think if it's Empire Strikes Back, actually it goes like this with the New York facing up right there. So I'm actually going to do it that way, so the clamp cobalt is right there. You can kind of make out the lettering. It's not going to be perfectly aligned with the way that it is in the movie because of the way the stamping and everything is, but you can get it pretty close. So I think I'm going to do it like that. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want a Sharpie, excuse me, and you're going to want to mark right in the center of the clamp. Just a little line, make sure you get it. I'm putting the Sharpie right in the center of the clamp. That way you know where to line the grip up with, because you can't have the clamp on when you're using this tool. You got to take the clamp off, but you still need to know where the clamp is going to be, because that's where you want one of the grips. So now we can take this off and put it aside, and now we have our mark. So sometimes this can get a little tricky. So the blank space is here, obviously where the grips are going to go, so you're going to want to line this mark up with the center of one of those areas, so that, and that comes down a little bit over it. So then just extend your line down, make sure you're straight. Something like that. As long as you're right in the middle. So now we can go ahead and put this on. And somewhere, there's our mark. So then you're going to want to line that up with the center of that space there, like that. Now for the tricky part that has everybody always really nervous, the actual epoxying of the grips. So we have our lower half cleaned and ready. We have our grips cut, notched, drilled, and scuffed up and cleaned. So now we can just go ahead and put these on. So we're going to uncap the epoxy. And you're going to want to squeeze out just a little bit at first. Make sure you squeeze out equal parts, because the way epoxy works is the two parts are kept separate and they don't harden when they're separate, but once they're combined, that's when the chemical reaction takes place that allows it to harden. So you're going to want to squeeze out equal parts, and then I take just a Q-tip, and you're going to want to mix it together. Make sure it's good and mixed. Stir it for, I don't know, 20 seconds or so. Nah, maybe not that long. That seems like a long time. Just make sure that it's good and mixed together. And then take your grip. Take just a little gob on the end of your toothpick. I'm going to try to get this in focus as much as I can while still being careful. And then just kind of layer it neatly over the outer edge of the grip. Again, if you get it in the center, that's not really a problem. You just don't want to get it on the outside edge or the top or anything like that. So kind of just make sure that you're spreading it around nice and evenly, both sides. All the way down to the edge. Something like that. Better to be too careful than not careful enough. And then I'm going to pass it off to my other hand here. And then you're going to want to make sure that that line is nice and centered. Again, I'm going to do my best to get this on camera here. It may be difficult here. Let me zoom in a bit. Now you do have to do this somewhat fast because once the epoxy is mixed, it will cure within a couple minutes, and once it really starts to get thick and tacky, it's really difficult to work with. So you got to be careful to go fast enough. So make sure again that your lower half is pushed firmly against the bottom. Then usually what I'll do is make sure that my line is nice and centered, and then I'll stand it upright. And then just slide the grip into place. Again, making sure that the bottom of the grip is flush and tight against the bottom of your grip alignment tool. That way both the grip and the lower are flush and nice and even with each other. So that's one grip. We can go ahead and do the same thing for the rest of them. This is a bit of a time-consuming process because you want to go slow, clean up any extra that might get on the edges. That's why I use clear also. They do sell epoxy in different colors, but if you go with clear, if anything does run over, you're far less likely to see it. I've used other ones in the past. For my job, we have this special stuff, epoxy, that works really well inside of engines. And I tried some of that my first time, and it kind of spilt out, and it was this horrible gray color, and you could see it really badly. So I ended up prying those off and redoing it, and it worked a lot better. And I don't think I mentioned this, but make sure that your notches, if you're going for Empire Strikes Back and The Force Awakens, make sure your notches are on the bottom. Don't epoxy them on with the notches facing the top, because you're going to regret it. And just a little bit of force to keep them on while we finish this process. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these, and I'll come back as soon as I get them all done. Okay, so now I have all 6 of my grips epoxied on. Now they are still damp. I did have to get just a little bit more epoxy because, like I said, it sets pretty quick. So about after 3 grips or so, it started getting really tacky and kind of difficult to work with. And as you can see, I haven't been off camera very long, and this is already pretty solid. So once it starts to turn into like a thick gel, kind of just ignore that and put some more, squeeze out some more and start using some fresh stuff, because it will be very difficult to work with, and it's not going to yield very, very good results. So don't be afraid to use a little bit more. So the next step is, what I like to do is I use some rubber bands to really make sure that these hug tight, and what I do is I wrap them around themselves to get a nice sturdy bond, and I will very carefully wrap this around the bottom. And another one. And wrap it around the top. And this ensures that you get nice even pressure all the way around. I might actually slide these ones down past the notch. That way, if the rubber band falls into the notch, then it's not applying full pressure, and that's what I want, especially on the ends. I don't want the ends lifting up. So, with the grip guide in place, and you really want to keep the grip guide there, that way they don't try and slide around at all. It really does a good job of keeping them in place. It's hard to tell if any is coming out around the seams or anything like that, so it's kind of just a waiting game, waiting for it to finish curing and hoping and praying that everything went well and nothing oozes out. So there's really no good way to tell. I mean, you could remove the grip guide, but like I said, I don't really want to because I don't want to risk the things moving around. So then it's just the waiting game of waiting for that to cure. So we're just going to come back in a couple hours once it's had time to set, and we'll pull the grip guide off and see how it looks. Okay, and magically we are back. It is a couple hours later, and I'm going to go ahead and take this off and see how it came out. Hopefully they're sturdy enough to retain themselves overnight until they fully cure, but I like to check it after a couple hours just to make sure that they are pretty well secured. So slide that off. I just like to give it just a little pull. I don't pull it hard at all. A little bit of, as you can see, I got a little bit on the outsides, but it's clear, so it's not that big of a deal. And it does scrape off. If you get it on the outside, it does kind of just wipe right off. So just kind of run your fingernail down the edge of it. I just like to, excuse me, get my nail under just the corner and just very lightly pull, lift up, just lightly, just to see how well the bond actually took. And it seems to have taken as well as expected. Yeah, I'm very happy with it. It's nice and sturdy. They're not moving side to side at all. They're not lifting up. They're nice and secure. And as you can see, there's virtually no epoxy anywhere around the edges. Looks good, and they're nice and flush, perfectly flush with the back side or the bottom side of the tube. Very, very well done. Nice and clean. And then we can, let's see, line up our bottom. Actually, nope, I had it going the other way for the logo. Slides in. Closes the clamp. I actually have this one. Tighten it one more. So that it's a little, oh, that's too tight. Ugh, there we go. We're going to loosen that up again. And it's nice and aligned with the clamp. And as I said, it can still come off. You have a little bit of a gap between the grip and the bottom half, and if you pull that out, you have a little bit more of a gap. But you need to have at least some gap in order to be able to turn it. Just like that. So then the last thing I'm going to do is, once this cures overnight, I'm just going to drill the 2 holes and the sound vent for the Cobalt D-ring, which is also from Wonawonga, and that'll go right on the bottom. If I can get it out of the bag. And then I'll line up with that grip. And you'll still be able to see the New York patent, or not the patent, but the stamping. And it'll go just like that. And what I do is I drill the 2 holes for the 2 rivets, and then I drill and you can either Dremel or I use a milling machine, a slot underneath the long part of the D-ring that kind of fits the same shape as that, and that's just for sound venting. If you're going for an FX saber with a speaker. But yeah, that'll be it. So I'll let this cure overnight. I'm not going to demonstrate how to do excuse me, how to do that. It's very basic, but that's about it, folks. That's how I install the Wonawonga grips using epoxy. Once it cures overnight, it'll be rock solid. They will hopefully never come off. I haven't had a problem yet with one. Pretty simple. I hope this has answered any questions you have. Feel free to send me a message through here on YouTube or through my Facebook page, East Coast Sabers. And also be sure to check out the Graflex Addict support group on Facebook if you have any Graflex related questions, or you're just a fan of the saber design itself. Be sure to check us out. Stay tuned for future videos, and thank you for watching.